welcome to
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Tonight we have Lamia, Queen of the Dark, horror host of Horror Hotel and horror host. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So like you say, I'm Lamia, Queen of the Dark, host of Horror Hotel. Horror Hotel is a hosted horror show, and it's also a film festival. The two run under the same name, and I run those both. And there's also the Horror Hotel, where I am with all of my zombies and minions and things like that. No, we don't often have human guests. When we do, they don't tend to check out, but that's another story there. But with the hosted horror show, we've been running for 8 years. And we are nationally syndicated on a few networks. We're on Retro Television, we're on It's Real Good TV, and we're on the Action Channel. The Retro TV and Action Channel are, primarily over the air. There are some cable systems that can pick it up depending on where you're at. It's Real Good TV is a streaming app. They run online. They have Roku, Amazon, Android, Fire Stick, all of those, fancy. I'm not really the tech person, but whatever those streaming channels are. And then we also have our own Horror Hotel Roku channel, and that is where we keep 100 episodes of the show at all time. I want to say we've done around 190 episodes. So, it's been a long time and a lot of content. So we keep 100 up at once. And then I always recommend, whenever somebody finds us on Roku, just search Horror Hotel and you'll find us there. But if you get started and you want to watch the older stuff, start at the end. Like, start at 100 and work your way back, because that's what's going to, get bumped off the next week. Whenever we add a new one, it goes on as number 1. So if you want to see them all, start at like 100 so that you make sure you catch it before it drops off. And then you can also see a couple of episodes at horrorhotel.net as well. Just click watch our show and you can see us there.
Yeah, I know you've done specials. Literally this week at the shop, we just watched the Halloween 2020 episode, and you not only do classic horror movies, horror adjacent, but you also do indie. It looks like you do indie shorts, yes. Full indie features and stuff like that. That's really cool, because a lot of people need to get are trying to get their names out there, and I think that that's a great thing you're doing to get people out there. So And
I really love showing everything from the genre. I mean, we will show things from, the 1800s to now. And a lot of people, when they watch hosted horror shows, they kind of expect what they're going to see. So they want to see these, 40s and 50s black and white films. And we show a lot of those, but we also show, like I say, anything that is within the genre or kind of adjacent to it that, we think horror people will still love. One thing, we do show the indie films, and I love doing those specials. I love putting those specials together. They're a lot more work than our like traditional shows, just, preparing it all. But I do love bringing that to people because it's stuff that you wouldn't really see otherwise. A lot of these films, they're only, on the film festival circuit, or, they might be somewhere online, but there's thousands and thousands or millions of horror short films out there on the internet that it can be hard to find, what you want to see. And we also show silent films. That's a big thing that I know they're not for everybody, but a lot of people are like, thank you for showing this, because nobody else really does it. Now I know there are a couple of other, hosted shows that do that too, but really I just love the genre as a whole and, everything from it. So I want to bring what, I love about it to other people.
Yeah, because I just watched Nosferatu, your episode of Nosferatu, last week, I believe. It is right. I'm a horror fan, been a horror fan almost as long as I can remember. And I remember growing up watching the black and white, and then I started getting into the 80s stuff and then the 90s. But it was funny because I went back as, not a kid, but as an adult, and I found all this silent horror, and I was like, wow, this stuff's really good. And what they did with it, horror just had its 100th anniversary with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but then you still got to go back to Thomas Edison's Frankenstein, which is was the Haunted Castle, I believe, which is even older than that. So, but yeah, silent horror
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
definitely a awesome thing. So, um,
I mean, it's where it all started to
no,
me.
yeah,
Like I think a lot of horror fans would have a great respect for that era. Some of your more mainstream fans, they don't necessarily, and they're like, well, I don't want to read a movie or whatever it is, or I don't want to see that, it's boring, it's not horror. But you wouldn't have what you have today if it wasn't for those movies.
oh yeah. If it wasn't for, the movies, we wouldn't have the musical scores that we have now.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the music they went back and put musical scores in it over that. We wouldn't have, uh, Halloween soundtrack. We wouldn't have this. We wouldn't have that. It made it sorry. It made it so that the music kind of helped guide the story and stuff like that. That we didn't, that up until relatively recently, that we didn't get it until again. So, all right, it's fun because like I said, I'm a big horror host fan. Been a big horror host fan for years. I discovered you via a friend. You were at another convention, and unfortunately, I couldn't be there, which I was supposed to be there. And he's like, "You have to find Horror Hotel." And I found you, and I've probably watched 150 episodes of the almost 200 that you have available, and it's just, I don't watch them in order. I don't watch them.
Right.
I do love the show. I think it's fun.
And that's the beauty of it, especially with the Roku. You can just pick what you're in the mood to see.
Because I think a while back you had Flash Gordon, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, just sitting there, I was like, Flash Gordon. We'll just watch some old series.
Right. That's a fun thing too. We started doing more recently is just putting in some serials now and then, and it's most of what we show is public domain. Not everything, but most of it is, and it can be. A lot of people, they play the same movies, and there are a lot of other movies out there for people to see. So sometimes I look for the more obscure stuff that you're not going to have seen, or I look for stuff that you're not really expecting to see, and we put our own fun take on it, and it's a good time. Yeah. But thank you for watching.
Oh yeah, it's funny because one was it last Halloween, I think, right around last Halloween, I went through and found every horror host I could find their version of Night of the Living Dead. So,
that's one we actually haven't shown.
I know it's amazing because I think you're the only one. Because I guarantee you, I found at least probably 30 other horror hosts that did Night of the Living Dead. So
one of the reasons that we haven't shown that, other than, everybody shows it. Everybody does show it, and I do sometimes try to stay away from the stuff that you've seen so many times. But one thing that stops us, that doesn't necessarily stop other hosts, when you're on the internet, you don't have any restrictions of like what you can show in terms of like length. Mm-hmm. Like if you want your show to be 2 hours and 8 minutes, it can often be 2 hours and 8 minutes if you're on your website or on your Roku. But because we have national syndication, we have to put in commercial time. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand. Like they see the commercials, but they're like, well, can't you make your show longer? Can't you just go another half hour or something? Like, no, we can't. We only get 1 hour and 35 minutes for a 2-hour show. So it does limit us in some ways. And, sometimes if I want to show a movie that's longer, I'll have to cut stuff out. And when you're talking about some of the classics like Night of the Living Dead, people see that you're cutting it out or editing it, and they're like, what are you doing? You're butchering a classic.
Oh yeah, it's very noticeable.
Sometimes I just leave them alone. Yeah.
And a lot of those, I want to say, a lot of early horror, especially the like 30s, 40s stuff, is really relatively short. So you probably have to you got to make up a lot of time, because I believe I don't know, what is it? I'm trying to think. One of the Mummy movies is only like 62 minutes long. So
a lot of them are right around 1 hour to 1 hour 10. And so, that's great, because then you've got host time and, skits and things like that, or we'll put in interviews with filmmakers from our festival, or filmmakers just that, might come on in general, or we'll put in short films and things like that. So, it gives a lot more, I guess, creativity with that era of films, that you can, throw a lot of other things in, pair a short film with it or other things. And then one thing I like about the shorter movies is I can talk a lot more about them, and I like to, I'm not the, for people who haven't seen the show, there are hosts out there who they love to razz on these movies. And that's what they do, and that's okay. They love to, like, point out what's goofy about it or this and that. And I respect the genre. And, even if something is goofy or hokey now, like, you have to look at it in the eyes of, like, people who saw it before. So I like to give a lot more information about the movies. I come from more of like a film in general background, seeing that, I was around cinema when it started, not just horror movies. They weren't, like I say, they weren't what they are now, and I've always loved it. It's a magical thing, the world of movies, and it's a place where monsters like me have always had a presence. So whereas in general human society we don't. And so even if we're often painted as the bad guys and gals, it's it's a place that a lot of us have felt accepted, I guess. So, to me, I like to give a lot more information about the movie. So, like, with a shorter film, I can do that.
Yeah, because it's fun. Like I said, watching some of your shows, you will, this, director went on to direct this. This actor was here. You give a lot of information per episode, and it's the fact that you said it's only an hour and 35 minutes that you get. It's weird because when I watch it, yes, you even though it's on Roku, you have your commercials in there and stuff. It seems like with the amount of stuff that you're able to put in there, it doesn't seem like an hour and a half worth of information that you're getting with the movie. And it feels like you're getting like 2.5 hours of information in a movie. I know that's,
well, thank you.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but with time and you have your skits and stuff, and it makes it feel like you're getting more enjoyment than what you're actually getting in time wise.
And a lot of people love the trivia too. A lot of people love the trivia. We have some people that they'll watch with friends or family, and like they have a competition, like a running competition of who can get the most trivia right on our, on the ones that are like A, B, C, D. And then we do pop-up trivia from time to time too. I don't always get to add in the pop-up trivia that's like during the movie. Just depends on how much time I have to work on the show. But it's fun to give you other sides of what you're seeing.
Now, how much pull do you have on what movies you get to air? Are you the one that...
Well, I produce the show, I write the show, I host the show, I edit the show. So basically, I do have my showrunner, Ray Sutch. He's the one who started the show. He's the one who came to me and wanted me to do the show. And he's the executive producer. And, if I were to run something by him and he says, well, I wouldn't necessarily like to see it on the show, but let's give it a shot and see what other people think, and basically trust my judgment there. There, like I say, some people, they don't like when we show the silent movies. Some people don't like when we show indie movies. They're like, a horror host needs to show classic, films and from this era. Well, not necessarily, because when you look at the first horror hosts, they weren't showing movies from 50 years ago. They were showing movies that were more current to them, so I think, some people kind of pigeonhole it, but basically we can show whatever is available to us and whatever, or is within reach to us. And, I do take audience suggestions and things like that. A lot of the stuff that gets recommended, we can't show, we can't pay for that. Like, that's going to be expensive. And a lot of people don't realize, because we're in so many places, it really, it makes, when you do license a film, like that would be extremely expensive because we stream and we're over the air and we're on cable systems. And so you have all these things. So that is the biggest thing that limits us, because we're basically a no budget show. So that's the biggest limiter. But as far as I just try to keep things, like I say, I try to keep a variety of things, something for everybody, if to where if you don't like what's on this week, hopefully we keep you entertained otherwise with what we're bringing to you, with the facts and the skits and things like that. But otherwise, tune in next week and you're most likely going to like what we show. I don't want to get in any set, like we're only showing this type of movies, and then it really limits who can enjoy it.
Yeah. And to be honest, with the amount of stuff out there, you could get, paint yourself into a corner with, just burn through, like we're only doing 40s and 50s, early 60s. You just burn through that 40s, 50s, and 60s stuff really quickly, especially with the public domain stuff. I, not to toot my own horn or anything, I started a show where I host Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up a Saturday morning kid. I'm still a Saturday morning kid. I'm almost 50 and I'll be a Saturday morning kid till the day I die. And it is because, I started out wanting to do a horror host myself. And then I was like, no, I don't, there's a lot of them. There are a lot better ones than I had ever be. So I decided to do Saturday mornings. And you're right. I tried to be, I'm just going to do 80s. And then I'm like, oh, wow, there's only X amount of cartoons that I can air. So, okay, well, I found 70s and I found 90s that I could air. So I'll put those together. And so far, everybody's been really, for me, it's been, no one's really complained, because I was like, oh, if you only want 80s, let me know. And everybody's like, no, just cartoons. We love them. Just keep showing us cartoons. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
So that's the way I think with horror movies is like, it's horror movies. It's fantasy. It's old school science fiction and stuff like that. I was like, if you can get it and you can get it out there to the public, then yes, thank you. So, I mean, it's
funny that you mentioned that, like, you almost were a horror host and then you decided not to be, because to be honest, a lot of people don't know this, but well, we started airing 8 years ago, but I've known Ray, who is, like I say, he's my producing partner. He's the executive producer of the show. I've known him for 16 years now. And, we've been working together on other projects for a long time. And when he first came to me with the idea of doing the show, I said, no. I said, there are so many hosts out there. Like, and his thing was, well, but they're not you, and they're not, everybody does things differently. You're going to do things differently. Do you want to at least give it a shot? And I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. And honestly, I didn't really expect that we'd be on air this long. I will be honest, when we started the show, I don't think it was good. I don't. Most of our beginning episodes are lost episodes. They have gone the way of, a lot of those classic silent films. They're gone. The footage is gone. It's just, anything, it evolves over time. And the show has definitely evolved over time. We never stop changing. And I think that's one of the things that's been, a benefit to, reaching more people and continuing to grow, is just, people don't always know what to expect when they're watching the show. And I think also, I want to say, like, somewhere in the last few years, just horror hosts are really being recognized again. They're really, like, there are more people who are hosting. There's more avenues that you can see hosts and things like that. I mean, look at this year, Elvira's getting a bigger comeback now than she had when she was on the air, I think.
Yep.
So all her new licensing and her book and everything like that, like, people are, like, paying attention to her again, and you look at people like Joe Bob, who's on Shudder, and Sven Gulli's been the king of horror hosts for nationally over a decade now, and so more people, I think, are experiencing that love of the genre, of the hosted genre, and and they look for other people who do it too, and the great thing is, it's not like when hosts were just on, one of your local over the air 358, and, like, if you missed it, you missed it. So, like, if there were 2 hosts on at the same time, who am I going to watch? Now, I mean, like, we run, I do want to mention, I did not mean to leave them off. We also air on the Monster channel as an affiliate on there. So you can watch us every Friday night, 10 o'clock Eastern on the Monster Channel. But like they run 24/7 horror hosts. They have a lot of other horror hosts that you can watch. And, you know, it's just, I don't even remember how I started this whole tangent. I'm not gonna lie. About hosting. Yeah.
Hosting.
But yeah, when it first started, I was like, but what if we're going to do this, it has to be different. I don't want to do a show that, you know, 50 other people have done this same show.
Yeah.
You know, how can we make it different? And I think, you know, that's really been a big part of how it's grown.
Yeah. It's funny because I ended up, our local horror host was Dr. Creep, and I grew up on Dr. Creep. I don't know if you know who Dr. Creep is. He passed away a few years ago, but I always thought he was great. Then I ended up becoming friends with him later on in life, because I became friends with his producer, and I would talk to him in studio and stuff like that. And it kind of snowballed. I'm like, man, it's like one of my childhood idols is standing right next to me. It was so much fun. But like I joked around about me becoming a horror host. My friend is a producer on another friend is a producer on another show. And he's like, you know, you should still do it. You should still try. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to try, but I do have a name. I do have a gimmick. If it ever comes to fruition, I have a game and a gimmick. So we're fine. I'm not a vampire.
That's all you need. That's the starting point that you need. Yeah.
Now I know you're older than all of them, but who were some of the horror hosts that you found that really kind of inspired you?
Honestly, I don't want to say that like any one person inspired me, or any one person, because like I say, I wanted us to be different. And I think one of the reasons when the show started, there's a small group of people that have been watching the show since the very beginning, since before we were, you know, syndicated, since when I would say that was bad. You know, a lot of our early episodes, we've reshot them a few times just for quality reasons and things like that. But I think the biggest thing when we started out, that why to me it was not good, is I wasn't being myself. I wasn't, you know, we were a little bit more trying to fit a mold of like, ooh, I'm a spooky horror host. Yeah. And like, it's just one thing I like is some people are like, you're like the monster next door. You know, that it's like, you know, friendly monster next door. It's not like, yeah, like, oh, I'm a vampire and I'm going to, you know, I mean, I am. And sometimes you'll see me feasting on people on the show. And, you know, I have a tendency to yell at people. I can't help it. It's in my nature. But, you know, it's just, I think a big thing that makes somebody, you know, stand out is to just be authentic and be themselves. And, you know, and I say that with all respect to, you know, earlier hosts. You know, of course, people are going to love, you know, like Vampira and Elvira. And, you know, a lot of times, especially being a woman in hosting, those are the two that, you know, you get the comparison. And the thing is, it's like, well, I don't like your show because you're not like Elvira. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be like Elvira. Or people are like, I love your show because you're not like Elvira. And I'm like, can't you just watch us both or not watch us both? You know, I don't think those comparisons really need to be there. I think, you know, it's the movies themselves that are what should draw people in. And of course the host's character is, you know, what keeps them watching and keeps them entertained outside of the movies. But I think too often people make comparisons and it just isn't always necessary. I think just watch it, and if you like it, and if you don't, that's okay. Like I say, there's so many other horror hosts out there. Watch them. If I don't have something for you, that's okay. Watch them. I'm not offended. You just don't have to tell me, you know, why you don't like it.
No, it's you know, like you said, you are unique in a niche market, which has got to be relatively, you know, it feels like it would be hard, but it's not, because almost everybody I've seen, you know, everybody tries to get compared to, you know, people are compared to Vampira, people are compared to Elvira, Svengoolie, you have all the men, you have all, but, you know, everybody has their niche that makes them them. and makes them fun to watch. And, you know, yeah, you talk about the movies and stuff like that, but, you know, I joke around is I've seen Corpse Vanishes, I don't know, 40 times in my life, but I can sit down and watch it with a different horror host, and each horror host has a different take. It makes it fun. And
it's a new experience.
Yeah, every time. It's not watching Corpse Vanishes again for the 41st time, you know, whatever. So,
right.
Okay. I always ask this of comic book people and stuff like that. If you could get a movie that you would love to see on your show, no money, it's just, you know, that they're going to go, okay, here's one movie, you can air it.
That's such a tough question. Such a tough question. Oh. Something I specifically want to show, or that like people want to see?
Yeah, that you specifically want to see on your show.
Oh man, I've never really thought about it because there's nobody like offering that. There's so many great ones. Honestly, I'd have to think about that a lot harder. You know, it kind of goes to like if somebody asks like, what's your favorite horror movie? And I'm I don't have one. You know, it's I love so many. That's a tough one. It really is. I really would have to think about it. See, I'm the kind of vampire who like, the one thing is we have a lot of time. You know, time for humans is not the same for vampires. So if I was really I would spend so much time thinking about that. I would go back to like all the movies that I remember watching, you know, in the past, or seeing them in theaters and things like that, and make a list and then like just narrow it down. That's kind of what I do, like picking movies for the show in general. Like I have these like master lists of like movies I know we can show or that we might be able to get, and I just it's not necessarily research, but it's a lot of, I guess, thought into why are we showing this? Why are we not going to show this? You know, how easy would it be to show this? Do we have to censor it? Do we have to cut it down? Do we have to, you know, like with the silent movies we show, those are a lot of work. One thing a lot of people don't realize, like I do the musical tracks to most of them. Like I pair them up with you know, the music that goes to it, and like sometimes like correcting title cards and, you know, fixing up the picture quality a little bit, or like getting different prints and things like that. So I'd have to think about that so much of why this one movie, why.
And I got to put this out there because this is just an ongoing joke for me and my friends is who's the best Dracula and why is it Christopher Lee? I am a huge Christopher Lee fan. I joke around that I was like, because I am a Christopher Lee, so I'm judgmental, and that's just me because I have to be Christopher Lee. But who do you, when it comes to your Draculas, you know, I ask everybody, and I know everybody's, you know, classic is Bela Lugosi, you know, Christopher Lee, Gary Oldman, even Jack Palance and Frank Langella even. Do you have a favorite Dracula, or is it like asking?
I would say the biggest thing is they're all so different, and their interpretations are also different. When you say best, like who matches the closest to the source material, or who you connect with? Well, I'd say I think the thing with Bela Lugosi is he was so charismatic, of like, you know, and the others are, and that's why people say like he was the first, you know, he was he was Dracula, not just in the movie, but like on stage, and like he was really invested in that character in a way that other people weren't necessarily, because he had played it so many times. But I think it was really that, I want to say, I guess, like kind of mystery around him, and that charm that other people didn't necessarily have. Not that he's my favorite, but I think that's why so many people pick him as like their Dracula. But they're also different, like, I mean, if you want to, Gary Oldman's, that comes to mind as like probably one of the most memorable. Like, it just like, it's just like you see it one time, and whereas others you see him 10 times, and but it's just, man, you ask a lot of tough questions.
That's my job.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I have trouble with favorites on anything. I really do. Like, I'm not one to pick favorites. I mean, again, I've got all the time in the world to watch these, so and enjoy them. So
I did we were talking the other day about, it's like, oh, somebody goes, well, what's your top 10 horror movies? I went, I couldn't tell you. I people ask me what my favorite movie of all time is, and I go, well, it's Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, but that doesn't count because Star Wars doesn't count for anything, because that's just Star Wars. It's over here. Then all other movies exist over here. I go, me and my kids and my wife just went and seen the new Halloween movie, which, and we have people going, oh, what's, Halloween, what you like? I'm like, I like all of them in a weird way, even the horrible ones I like, just because there's
always something to like about it, even if it's not. That's like, to me, when people are like, I loved that movie, but I hated the ending, I hate the movie.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of one of my favorite, I can actually say this, probably my favorite vampire book of all time is I Am Legend. Robert Matheson. I love it. I have multiple copies of it, different printings and everything. I even like, Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. I like the Omega Man. I Am Legend. I think it's still a good movie. The end is not the book. It doesn't fit what it's supposed to be, but I still appreciate it. And I still did, for that movie, it was decent. But I don't think they got the point of the book in the movie.
One of the toughest things with remakes is how much should you stick to the original source, and how much should you just use it for inspiration? And people have this notion that like remakes are a newer thing, but they're really not, because even if you look at a lot of the early talkies, like they were just silent films with sound now. Like they just redid them with talking actors, with different actors. And I mean, the 40s, look how many Killer 8 movies you've got. So it's, and even with, writers tend to take the same grain of ideas, of stories, and just make them their own. So I think, I don't tend to, I always will prefer the classics. I just will. I just, there's very few times that I'll say, well, I really liked this remake as like a remake. But I think if you're doing a movie over and you're trying to be too much like the original, what's the point? What are you bringing that's new? What can you bring that like makes it stand out, instead of just repeating the same thing? But then again, a lot of fans, when it comes to remakes or repeats or reboots or sequels and all of that, like they want to recapture that feeling that they had with the original. Yeah. It's so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that. I always try to look at like any like remake as like a new movie. Like try to disconnect from that original and just enjoy it, or don't. But when you try to, it's a tough line to walk.
Yeah, because you get to that point where there are some great remakes, reboots, and there's some great sequels then there's some bad sequels and bad remakes. Then you get a good sequel or a good remake that had a great sequel, but had a, it starts getting really confusing after a while. But I'm just a movie fanatic. I love cinema. I love movies. My wife and my kid hates it because I will watch a movie over and over and over again just to study like the nuance and stuff like that throughout the. And she's like, "How do you do that over and over again?" I'm like, "It's how I am. I'm OCD, which doesn't help either." So, but I can appreciate, because you said silent movies. They just remade talkie versions of it. I believe it was the Unholy Three with Lon Chaney, where they made both, and it was only like 4 or 5 years apart. So, all right. Now here's when we get the interesting questions. I know you have the horror hotel and you have a lot of. What's easier to deal with, zombies or vampires?
Vampires. Hands down. Vampires are definitely, I mean, when you say easier to deal with as far as do they listen to me? I do have a little bit more pull with the vampires being there. Well, I won't say mother because most of them call me grandma at this point, but they tend to listen to me a lot more than the zombies. I mean, if you watch the show, they can get a little bit out of hand. The tough thing with zombies is, at least the thing is, you can make other zombies. Some people that watch the show, they're like, why are your zombies so different? Like, it depends on how you raise them. I don't mean raise them like kids. I mean, it depends on how you bring them into existence. So if you watch the show, and you have for a while, you probably have met Papa Voodoo. Papa Voodoo is my source for minions on the show. But the thing is, the longer they're around, the better their mental, faculties, I guess, the better it is for them, easier it is for them to do things, to communicate and things like that. Lil Zombie has been with me since 1966, and I put him in the ground a number of times in that time, but we keep bringing him back. And weirdly with the show, like in the show in the beginning, he wasn't on very much, and people just love him. They do. I don't understand. Some people, they're like, that weirdo with the little gravelly voice is back on, like, get rid of him. But he's got his own little following, and I'll never understand. So I think he owes his continued undead existence to fans. But vampires, they tend to listen to me a little bit more, but everybody around kind of listens to me in the end. They know I'm the boss, at least at Horror Hotel. There. So
you got your demons and your vampires, your zombies and your werewolves and whatnot. So, and they all got to be under control. So,
yes.
All right. I know that you do episodes where you're streaming them live with people, because I watched the Halloween one. I didn't get to watch it live. I watched it almost a full year late, but I do know that you do live episodes.
So the thing there, it's not actually live. We do a live chat. We do like when it's on, we talk with viewers, which I do basically every week. Anyway, anytime, I do want to say, anytime you reach out through social media, it is me responding. Some people assume like I've got cronies or henchmen or zombies responding. Like, I'm not going to trust them to that. So I do handle the social media, and I try to communicate with people as much as I can. Sometimes it can be a lot, and I might miss some stuff. But that originally started with whenever we would do a holiday special. Mm-hmm. If you were watching, no matter what time zone you were in, I'm on there and I'm chatting with you and other people from the show, from the crew and from the cast. They're on chatting as well. Sometimes with the specials, if it's like a Halloween show and we have a number of short films, some of the directors might be in the chats too. So that's the live aspect of it. The show itself is not live. I really respect people who can do a live show. It's so many, there's so many logistics that go into that and so much room for trouble. It's not something that I personally would want to do. But a big thing too, like since the beginning of last year, when, people couldn't congregate, couldn't gather, I stopped shooting with the crew. And so the last 2 years, like I'm not shooting with the crew. And so doing it live would definitely not be happening. But, I definitely will be bringing people back in for shooting and stuff. But the live aspect is the chatting, the chatting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny because I have the show that I'm doing now, the group therapy TV, spawned out of public access back in the early 2000s. And I tried one live episode once. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Doing all this stuff, because we tried to do it and it was literally like 3 of us trying to do a live show, and it was hour-long, midnight on a Saturday night, and it was still super complicated. We had people calling in, everything, and it was logistical nightmare, and I will never do that again. I'm not saying I won't do a live show, but it'll just be me hooking up. We'll be interviewing somebody. We'll run it live on YouTube, and you won't, I guess, but it won't be in the studio with a camera crew with this, with that. So, but I know you used to do conventions.
Still do.
Still do. Have you been able to get out and get it to many since the whole pandemic and all that fun stuff?
Just my own. So 2020, we were not able to hold the festival, which Horror Hotel Festival is every June. It was not in June of 2020. We had to postpone, and then it wound up being that we had a dual edition for 2021 this past June. So it was all of the movie selections from 2020, and we expanded and added on all our 2021 selections. So we had over 100 movies in 4 days, and I mean that was a good time. It's tough to know what to choose from for a lot of people, but there was a lot to see and a lot to choose from. So that was getting back into it, and then we'll have a more, I guess, normal single edition in 2022. It's always in June in Northeast Ohio. But as far as other events, I have not gotten to other ones. There is a virtual festival that will be airing some of the episodes of Horror Hotel, virtual Ghoularty Fest coming up Halloween weekend, where they'll have other hosted shows on there. They've got, like, I guess, special guest appearance videos and things like that. I don't know how interactive it will be or anything. I really don't have a whole lot of information on that, but that's a virtual event that, like I say, they'll be at least airing some stuff from us, and that's basically it. It's been a weird time. It's been a weird time for humans and monsters alike. It was tough running a hotel these last 2 years, running Horror Hotel and not having food coming to me. Let me just say, that was tough.
You order food, and then the food shows up with food.
Yes. Yes.
Like I said, it's fun. It is great that you're out there. I thought, horror hosts were kind of a lost art. I know it's bad. A few years back, because I didn't really see any, and then all of a sudden it was like this huge influx of them about a decade ago. And I was like, it feels like a new horror host renaissance that, and it's bad because my mom, she called me up last week and had to tell me while I'm driving home, she goes, I'm watching Frankenstein on Svengoolie. And I'm like, that's amazing, Mom. I did not expect that from you. I don't get to watch Svengoolie when it's on, because legitimately I close my shop at 8:00. It comes on at 8:00. I get food, and then I come home. I usually catch the end of it, but I DVR it and I watch it later. So some nights I'll watch like
that's the beauty too. Like I say now for hosts is there's so many ways for people to access their shows. So and it's great for the viewers too, obviously, because you're not stuck to just, I have to watch it at 8 o'clock or I don't get to see it.
Yeah.
Technology.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, it's I think I found some horror hosts even on like Amazon Prime recently. So by accident, I'm watching a movie and they're like, you would like this. Oh, maybe I will like this. I do like that. I will watch that. It's, you know, I tell my kids have started watching some of them with me, and it's just kind of cool because you know, my mom watched it when I had a horror host when she was a kid. I had a horror host when I was a kid. My kids didn't have really horror hosts until now that they're pretty much adults. And so now they're watching horror hosts as adults. So maybe then we can keep it going and going and going and going and going. Because as long as you're around, we'll still have a horror host up until like my great kids. So
I'll be a hologram eventually, or like, I don't know, like that's how we'll be hosting. New technology.
You'll be hosting from the horror hotel on the moon, where you can go out all the time. You don't have to stay in during the day. You can go. You get a bunch of moon zombies and moon vampires and moon werewolves. They're always werewolves because they don't turn because they're on the full moon. So they're always moon werewolves. All right, let's see. I think I might have gotten all my questions in. Yeah, it looks like I actually have all my questions in. That's pretty bad. Before I go, I got to ask you, because we do a comic book convention here in Piqua. We had to cancel it because of, reasons, we would love to have you here sometime if it's logistically possible. We would love to have you here in Piqua for our convention. Are you still doing any other conventions once everything's settled? Are you going out to any other ones?
Well, I don't really have anything planned right now. It's just, it's not just a matter of, events haven't been happening, but I always have a lot of different things I'm juggling, and, running festivals of my own, running the show, I get very limited on time. So I may have a long period of time to do things, but on any given day, I have a lot of stuff I'm dealing with. So, I don't get to a lot of events, to be honest. I do enjoy doing them, but I just don't tend to have a chance to. Maybe that'll change in the future, but it's usually within a normal year, I'll have a few that I go to, but not in abundance. I know there's some people that they're at a different event every weekend, and I just can't manage that. Well, but
probably a lot of them, they go in film.
But come next year, we'll have our comic book out. That has been long running of in the works. Things got pushed back last year because of everything going on. Because we had originally, we're supposed to have launched by now, but that's our Lamia the Zombie Slayer comic. Just be on the lookout for that because it will be coming out soon. And we are also, no timeline. It hasn't even begun. It's been in the works for some time, but it's not like officially started. We are eventually going to have a horror hotel comic as well. So that, has been in the, not just planning stages, but early stages for a while now. But like I say, a lot of things going on. So it can be tough to be like, this is going to happen now. But I do know that, by next year, we'll have Lamia the Zombie Slayer out at least, and that will be loads of fun. It is done. It just has not gone to print and has not, gone for sale yet.
Self-publishing?
Yes, okay. To start, yeah. Yeah, we'll do a limited print run, and then eventually we'll do like digital and additional prints and that. But
cool, because I will definitely get that to add to my collection. Okay, I gotta ask you this: are we ever going to get a horror hotel movie?
Well, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not. People have asked that, and I'm like, well, do you have an investor? Movies aren't cheap.
No.
It's just honestly, and and I'll just have to say it again, you know, with a lot of things always going, it's time management can be tough. It just, doing other projects can be tough, and finding ways to put that in. We've had people, since we did like the Lamia the Zombie Slayer short came out on the show, we've had people like, well, can you be Lamia the Robot Slayer, be Lamia the Dinosaur Slayer, go back in time to when you were young? And I'm like, I was not walking among the dinosaurs, I'm not that old, please. But you know, people always, you know, they would love to see more of that. And we've had others with the Horror Hotel movie. I just don't know what it would be about, really. I don't. I'm open to ideas. I'm not ruling anything out, but I don't see it in the near future. That's for sure.
Okay. Would you ever work with another horror host? I did have couple more questions there. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I've made cameos on other people's show.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had other hosts come on our show as well. So I mean, as far as, you know, that kind of collaboration, but as far as hosting a show like different from my own, is that what you mean? Or like
okay.
a special?
Yeah, do like a special, like a full episode where like you have you and another host do an entire show, not just a cameo, not just an appearance, but a full show, you know, full crossover episode from beginning to end.
I wouldn't rule it out. You know, I think it would definitely have to be somebody, I guess, with like a similar style, and like so that it would mesh well. But I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I love watching other people's shows too, and seeing what, you know, what they do and how they present things. I don't get a lot of time to watch a lot of other hosts, to be honest, but when I can, I do check them out. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm open to many things. I mean, you can't be a vampire and be like, no, I will never do that. Well, ask me in 60 years. I don't know. Things change. Thoughts change. So
like I said, it's funny because, you know, I do watch a lot of television, but given the fact my normal job is I own a comic book store, I just watch a lot because I always have it on in the background. I always, you know, I'm not always watching, but I'm always, it's on, I'll turn it on, and I'll, you know, if I'm slow, I'll turn around and watch it for a while. And, but you're right. Time management is, I legitimately do most of my shows like this one. And when I do my other one, they're at like 11 o'clock at night because it's the only downtime I have, because, it's when everybody else is asleep. I'm the only one awake. I produce, shoot, do everything with my own show, edit. But I do it when the world is asleep, because if not, I don't get nothing done. You know, as you saw before the edit, which you saw, other people didn't see. My kid is he's 11 and he just loves getting into trouble. So. I have to say, I do greatly appreciate you appearing on the show. I want to thank you a ton. You know, like I said, it would be, you know, like I said, if you ever do get a chance when we do our PickleCon next year, you know, we're gonna throw you an invite again. But we do understand that you know, time is a limited commodity in most people's lives, so I get it. But I will continue to watch, and now I'm going to go back and try to find the earliest episodes I can find. Because like I said, I just watched, I think the one of the newest ones I saw was last year's Halloween episode. And I gotta admit, I love the Dias dos, you know, Muertes style makeup. That was pretty cool.
Oh, thank you.
And it is just, it's so fun. I'm so glad you guys are bringing this back. I'm glad you are bringing it back. I love the horror host. Like I said, I thought it was a lost art, and now it's coming back, and I think it's probably stronger. It's as strong, if not stronger, than it was, because, you know, you had just affiliates at the one time doing it. And now there's so many people who are just putting that out there. they're on the internet and stuff, and I'm glad you're one of them. I'm glad that you're there, and it's a very fun show. I appreciate it. So
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
you're welcome. Is there anything you'd like to say? Any upcoming event? You know, you already did the events. Next episode, anything you want to plug before we go?
Well, there's a lot of ways to see the show. So, I mean, the best place to go is just horrorhotel.net. That is where you can find out about the show and also the Horror Hotel Festival. Right now, the festival is open for film, script, and composers for submissions for the competitions for next year. So when you go to horrorhotel.net, you get the festival or you get the TV show. Just click the poster you want to learn more about. The festival's every June, like I say, in Northeast Ohio. We have not locked our location or anything like that for next year. We will be changing, but it will either be the first or second weekend of June. So people can find out about that there. They can find out about the show, obviously, of where you can see it. Like I say, Friday nights we're on the Monster Channel. Saturday is when most of our affiliates air us, as Saturdays. Depending on where you're at, their time zone is going to depend on time, but a lot of them are midnight. And that's when we also add on a new episode every week on, well, it's not new every week, but if you go to the Roku, the #1 episode changes every week. So basically whatever is showing on our main affiliates on Saturday becomes episode #1. Before we would do, generally 3 new episodes a month. The last year it's been more so like 2 new episodes a month. Our next new one will be Halloween weekend. That will be our new Halloween special. It is going to be a ton of fun. I love doing those holiday ones, and I know people really they really come out of the woodwork to watch those ones. A lot of people tune in for those. So that will be our next new one. But again, horrorhotel.net, and you can also follow our social medias. That is on Instagram and Twitter at Horror Hotel Show, and then on Facebook it's at Horror Hotel Film Fest. And yeah, just follow us on there and reach out. You can also reach out through the website if you want to, make a movie recommendation or just say, hey, I watch your show and I like it, or whatever you fancy. Just horrorhotel.net. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate it, and we hope to have you on again. Maybe, like I said, maybe things will be better when we have the internet issues that we had earlier. It seems like they might have went away. I didn't have any issues on my end, so we're good. Maybe I can shoot it on not a Sunday for some weird reason. Zoom does not work on Sunday. So I thank you yet again. It means a lot. I do appreciate every guest, and I was like sitting there going, man, I was like, I wonder if I can even get her on the show, and I got you, and that's a big thing for me. So I appreciate it. So all right,
and I appreciate being on.
Thank you. We'll let you go, and you have a pleasant night. And if I don't talk for Halloween, have a great Halloween. So
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Good night.